What's going on today, YouTube? Rob here. In today's video, we're continuing off with our Yugi Legendary Decks box of decks. Right now, we're on deck number 2. This is Yugi's Battle City deck. This is actually a pretty neat deck and contains some pretty cool cards and some pretty cool concepts of the stuff that did end up getting revamped in the TCG at a later date. But this is pretty cool, and I'm just showcasing it for you guys on the channel. Before I get started though, I just want to say if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing for more fun Yu-Gi-Oh videos, and consider leaving a like and commenting on what other deck profiles or what other box openings or things you might want to see on the channel. Without wasting any more of your time, let's get into it. Alright guys, let's get into this second deck of our Yugi Legendary decks. And this is the Battle City deck. So first up, we've got Valkyrian, the Magna Warrior. This cannot be normal summoned or set. Must first be special summoned from your hand by attributing 1 Alpha the Magnet Warrior, Beta the Magnet Warrior, and Gamma the Magnet Warrior from your hand and or side of the field. You can tribute this card, then target 1 Alpha, Beta, and Gamma that are in your graveyard and special summon those targets. Next up, we have 1 copy of the Dark Magician. Nothing special. Again, just a level 7, 2500 attack monster. We've also got Dark Magician Girl. This card gains 300 attack for every Dark Magician or Magician of Black Chaos in either player's graveyards. Next up, we have 1 copy of Buster Blader. This card gains 500 attack for each Dragon-type monster your opponent controls or in their graveyard. Next up, we have Archfiend of Gilfer. When this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field, and equip that target with this card. That monster loses 500 attack while equipped with this card. Next up, we have copies of Jax, Queens, and King's Knight. Jax Knight and Queen's Knight are just normal monsters. And they have Jax Knight is level 5 with 1900 attack, and Queen's Knight is level 4 with 1500 attack. And for King's Knight, he is level 4, but when this card is normal summoned while you control Queen's Knight, you can special summon Jax Knight from your deck. Next up, we have 1 copy of Baphomet. When this card is normal or flip summoned, you can add 1 Gazelle, the King of Mythical Beasts, from your deck to your hand. Speaking of, we have our 1 copy of Gazelle, the King of Mythical Beasts, a level 4 vanilla monster with 1500 attack. Next up, we have the 3 Magnet Warriors, Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. These are all level 4 vanilla monsters with 1500 attack, 1700 attack, and 1400 attack, respectively, per monster. Next up, we have the 1 copy of Big Shield Gardna. During either player's turn, when this face-down card and no other cards is targeted by a spell card, change this card to face-up defense position, and if you do, negate the spell card's activation. And if this card is attacked, change it to attack position at the end of the damage step. Lastly, for our monsters, we have the 1 Karibo. During your opponent's turn at damage calculation, you can discard this card, you take no battle damage from that battle, and this is a quick effect. On to our spells we go. We're starting off with our Swords of Revealing Light, which lets you flip all monsters your opponent controls face up. This card remains on the field for 3 of your opponent's turns, and while this card is face up on the field, monsters your opponent controls cannot declare an attack. Next up, we have 1 copy of Monster Reborn, which lets you target a monster in either player's graveyard and special summon it. Next up, we have Dark Magic Curtain, which lets you pay half your life points and special summon 1 Dark Magician from your deck. You cannot special summon other monsters the turn you activate this card, but you can set. Next up, we have 1,000 Knives. This lets you, if you control Dark Magician, to target one monster your opponent controls and destroy that target. Next up, we have Magic Formula, which can only be equipped to Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl, and that equipped monster gains 700 attack. And when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you gain 1,000 life points. Next up, we have Magical Dimension. This lets you, if you control a spellcaster type monster, to target one monster you control and tribute that target, then special summon one spellcaster type monster from your hand, then you can destroy one monster on the field. Next up, we have one copy of Diffusion Wave Motion, which lets you pay 1,000 life points, then target one level 7 or higher spellcaster type monster that you control, and this turn, only that monster can attack, and it must attack all monsters your opponent controls, once each. The effects of effect monsters destroyed by these attacks do not activate and are negated. Next up, we have Double Spell, which lets you discard one spell card, then target one spell card in your opponent's graveyard, place that target in the appropriate zone on your side of the field, and as this card's effect resolution, after this card's effect resolution, follow its card text as if you had used it yourself. Next up, we have one copy of Ectoplasmer, which lets you once per turn during each player's turn or each player's end phase. The turn player must tribute one face-up monster, and if they do, inflict damage to their opponent equal to half the original attack of the tributed monster. Next up, we have Soul Taker. This lets you target one face-up monster your opponent controls, destroy that target, then your opponent gains 1,000 life points. Next up, we have Pot of Greed. Lets you draw 2 cards. Next up, we have Card Destruction. Each player discards their entire hand, then draws the same number of cards that they discarded. Next up, we have Exchange. Both players reveal their hands and add one card from each other's hand to their hand. Next up, we have Monster Recovery. This lets you target one monster you control that is owned by you, and if that monster is still on the field, shuffle it and your entire hand into the deck. Also, after that, draw cards equal to the number of cards you shuffled from your hand into the deck by this effect. You cannot activate this card if you have a card in your hand that is owned by your opponent. Next up, we have Polymerization, which lets you fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or side of the field as fusion materials. We also have one copy of Defusion, which lets you target one fusion monster on the field, return that target to the extra deck, then if all fusion monster or material monsters that were used for its summon are in your graveyard, you can special summon them. You can special summon all of them, I should say. Lastly, for our spells, we have Multiply. This lets you tribute one face-up Karibo and special summon as many Karibo tokens. Fiend, Dark, level 1, attack 300 and defense 200 as possible in defense position. These tokens cannot be tributed for a tribute summon. Now onto the traps. We have one copy of Mirror Force, which, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, destroy all attack position monsters that your opponent controls. We also have one copy of Magical Hats. This lets you, during your opponent's battle phase, choose 2 spell or traps from your deck and one monster you control. Special summon them as normal monsters, attack 0 and defense 0 in face-down defense position. Set the chosen monster if it is face-up, and shuffle them all on the field. These 2 cards chosen from your deck are destroyed at the end of the battle phase and cannot return to the field except during this battle phase. Next up, we have Magic Cylinder, which when an opponent's monster declares an attack, target the attacking monster, negate the attack, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its attack. Next up, we have Spellbinding Circle, which when you activate this card, targeting one monster your opponent controls, it cannot attack or change its battle position, and when that monster is destroyed, destroy this card. Next up, we have Light Force Sword. This lets you banish one random card from your opponent's hand face down, and during your opponent's 4th standby phase after this card's activation, return that card to their hand. Next up, we have Chain Destruction. When a monster or monsters with 2,000 or less attack is summoned, target one of them and destroy all cards with the same name in its controller's hand and main deck. Next up, we have Soul Rope. When a monster you control is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, except during the damage step, pay 1,000 life points and special summon one level 4 monster from your deck. Lastly, for our traps, we have one copy of Tragedy. So when a face-up attack position monster or monsters your opponent controls is changed to face-down or face-up defense position, destroy all defense position monsters that your opponent controls. Moving on from our 40-card main deck, we have our one copy of Chimera, the Flying Mythical Beast. This requires Gazelle, King of Mythical Beasts, and Baphomet. This card is always treated as a Phantom Beast card, and when this card is destroyed, you can target one Baphomet or one Gazelle, King of Mythical Beasts in your graveyard and special summon that target. Alright guys, that's it for this Yugi Battle City deck profile. We have one more deck to cover, and that's Yugi's final deck, which is a Gadget Silent Sword kind of deck profile. So we'll get to that at another time. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, consider subscribing, and also comment, like I said, on some stuff that you might want to see for future videos, and I will see you in the next one. That's game.